Hey, Entrepreneur Nation. Welcome back to another episode of Entrepreneur 101 from concept to exit and everything in between. I am Reggie B. I am your host. And listen, I got to tell you, I've got a great guest on the show today. We had a little bit of trouble connecting, but we finally got it done. And I got to tell you, I'm excited. Henry Wong is the president and brand strategist at Vyoo. Vyoo is a branding and content company who specialize in personal and product branding. Henry has over 25 years of experience in the advertising industry. Sorry. He's worked with politicians, pro athletes, TV personalities, helping them, entrepreneurs, CEOs, you name it. Henry's been there, done that. This is old school for Henry. And, he's helped a lot of people build their personal brands. And he's going to come on here today and give us some great information on, how you can do that and how important that is, building your personal brand as well as your product brand. I'm looking forward to talking to Henry. So with that being said, Henry, welcome to the show.
Reggie, thank you so much for having me.
Hey, it's an honor for sure. So listen, Henry, I know you've got a bit of a background story, and I want to get into that. I always start with my guest's background and kind of tell us, your story. So you're with us from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. For those in the U.S. who are not quite sure where Toronto is, but now were you born and raised in Toronto, or tell us a little bit about your background? Because I know there's something about a Chinese restaurant that I want to touch on too. So tell me a little bit about Henry Wong, pre-entrepreneur.
I think I follow a lot of the immigrant stories that certainly happened. I was certainly born here in Canada, in Toronto, but I grew up in the back of a Chinese restaurant where, because it was such a closed community, I didn't even speak a word of English. But eventually I began learning. I learned there was another language other than Chinese by venturing out to school.
Right.
My parents put me to work almost immediately at the restaurant, and I began interacting with customers. And I think that, if anything, what you're trying to get to is really the formation of perhaps my origin and what maybe sparked what bit of success I've had over the years.
Absolutely.
Because when you're at the front of anyone who's worked at the restaurant, I think certainly personality and sort of customer service goes hand in hand, and you learn to tailor your personality to people and adjust accordingly. So I learned to tell a lot of stories. I learned that sharing tales and getting to what the customers are all about was a great way of connecting with them. And that formed a lot of wonderful relationships. But it also gave me an excellent observation of the human condition, because not only were we having different types of people come into the restaurant, from everything from families to truck drivers to just even vagrants. It gave me a good cross section of what society was all about. So that really wasn't so much the formation of my thinking and methodology that as I moved on into the world and into business, I hung out and began working within ad agencies and became creative director of one of the largest global agencies on the planet, which was a great learning institution. At the same time, I began putting together certain methodologies on how I would create brands around products. And all I've done is really translate a lot of that to the individual, because I think in many ways, we as people can be often thought of, particularly if you're in the business of selling or you're in the business of promoting your company or product, you are in fact a little bit of a brand. So those attributes and those sort of processes that I began to formulate became really what the basis is of my book, and certainly my methods in terms of helping people manifest their brands.
Right, and that's awesome. Now, at any point, obviously, your parents were entrepreneurial. Did they want you, and maybe you did, I'm not sure, but did they want you to kind of take over the family business, fall into the family business? Did you go on to higher education? Did you just do high school? How did that work out?
No, I mean, certainly my father was an entrepreneur, being an owner of a business. And I think he definitely wanted me to follow in the footsteps of be having an entrepreneurial thinking. So no matter what I want to do, if I imagine being a doctor or a lawyer, say, oh, yeah, we could set up our own business. We could create some space in the back here. You can
Right, yeah.
things. So that was his sort of thinking. I think like a lot of immigrant parents, they have high aspirations for you to certainly be amongst the professionals and have a good career there. I was a little bit more creatively bent, and so I think that's what led me to the advertising business, because I could, spin tales as a copywriter. I could come up with ideas and concepts, and that really helped to formulate a lot of the sort of storytelling basis that becomes the essence of most brands. Because if you can connect with people, and stories, as you know quite well, Reggie, is a terrific way of connecting with people. So I think from a very early age, it just became a way of connecting with people using story.
Right. And you've mentioned stories, and we're going to go into that because I'm going to
Mhm.
read something here that I know you said, and it's standing for something and telling the story is everything. And I know you're big on your personal story is very important to the sales process. And I don't know if a lot of people put a lot of thought into that, because when building a company or that, we're looking at the brand and not so much the personal branding side of things. How important is the personal brand side of things as far as branding a product or a service?
I think particularly if you're an entrepreneur, having people to understand why you created this company or created this product is often the reason why they would connect and follow you. People who are absolutely very passionate about something can't really be made up in any way. That idea of that inner sort of fire that runs within you is often the drive for why people start companies. But at the same time, it becomes really the impetus for the success. And there's a story that often goes along with it. And through the many people and brands I've worked with, there is always a story. And it's the idea of trying to discover it. It isn't simply telling people, this is my history. I was born in 1980, and then through the years
Right.
I went to engineering school, and you hear this a lot in networking events. But I think for to tell the true story is really getting to the heart and soul of what you're all about, and people understanding that and connecting with you on that level. So I think a lot of that really comes from understanding who you are and how you can share it with people. And it is something that isn't as easily done as
Right.
it is described, as you can imagine.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that because I've spoke to people before where many of us don't take the time to actually get to know ourselves, because especially as entrepreneurs, we get busy and we don't really know, okay, what is it I'm really looking to get out of this? We just know, okay, we want to be our own boss, we want to have our own business. But at the end of the day, is that really what it's all about? Because we don't take the time to get to know our story and what's really important to us and the value to us. How hard do you find it to get people to understand their own story and be willing to share it, to
Mhm.
get that connection with people?
Yeah, I think for a lot of whether you're at the executive level or running a company, quite often you think, well, I don't really have a story. I'm not that interesting of a
Right.
person. But what you're doing is quite often super interesting. And if you look at, particularly in the entrepreneurial mindset, there is often something that drives a person that causes that impetus to go out on their own. For some people, it's they often say, well, I had no other choice. I'm unhireable as an
Yes, I've
individual.
heard
So
that
this is
many times.
yeah. But that in itself is a wonderful track. But along the way, there's a bit of a hook or a bit of connection that people can understand. I worked for years for an insurance company. Everybody can identify with it. I wasn't going anywhere. I knew this wasn't for me. People can identify with that. One day I had this brainstorm of an idea to create a program that would automate, housekeeping, for example. So while it may not be interesting to everybody, but the process that you've gone through to get there can be super interesting.
Right.
What led the person to it? What is your background that would have created that idea? We hear the big stories of the richest billionaires and the richest entrepreneurs and the likes of Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. If you think about it, if they were anybody else, you would go, well, that's kind of an average story anyway.
Yeah.
But because of their level of success and when they're prominent, suddenly it becomes interesting that they, went to school, that they created a program, or they were an engineer and they, were with one company and gained success. That happens time and time again. And it's really how you present it to people and how interested you are as an individual, more so than trying to make yourself interesting. If you're interested in yourself and your ability to perhaps serve your customers, then I think that's the beginning of a wonderful connection, and that's often where the story can begin.
Right, and I've often said too that a lot of times, entrepreneurs can be proud people, but we don't take the time to actually give ourselves enough credit for what we have done, because there's always something else to do. We never really take time to pause and say, you know what? You've done a pretty damn good job up until now, regardless of the pitfalls we've come across or, the stumbling blocks. Just to get out of bed every day and to tackle, to persevere, to just keep pushing forward to become that, successful entrepreneur. And success is whatever it is to you. It doesn't have to be, dollar wise. Is worth looking in the mirror and saying, hey, you know what? Thanks for showing up today, and thank you for the effort you put in today. And that I think needs to be part of everybody's story, is a little bit of a thank you, because we don't do it enough. So when did you know, though, you wanted to be an entrepreneur? You worked in advertising, you worked for an insurance company. At what point did you say, you know what, I need to do something for me?
I think it came down to, and I think this is true of a lot of people who go off on their own. They realize that I can no longer work in this environment. And I think it was just around a simple campaign. And within the creative field, you have different levels of approvals. And I recall, I guess, one of the global creative directors commenting, we were all pitching different taglines and that, and it was for a major hotel. And I had a wonderful line that, I thought it was wonderful, which is simply rest assured, which is like, we'll look after everything, and you have a certain level of rest coming your way. The global creative director at the time sort of imposed his authority and said, "Oh, we're going to go with another line, and it's simply, you're in the right place," meaning INN, you're in the right place.
Okay.
I thought, oh my goodness, that's such a bad pun that can't connect with people. No, really, I can no longer sort of work under these conditions. And I don't know if it was pride or whether it was just me being a little bit of a smart ass, but I think a lot of people can certainly identify with that when you reach a point that, I can do maybe things a little bit better on my own.
Yeah.
So there it was. I had the opportunity to, try it out on my own, and it's been wonderful. And along the way, as anybody will find out who runs a business, you can be at the mercy of your clients and customers, or they can be somewhat at the mercy of you, depending on how you set it up.
Right.
For me, it was always about not so much how much business I could bring in, but the right kind of business, meaning they had to align with my own philosophy in terms of wanting to do good in the world. So through the years and through the various agencies I've run, it's become a little bit more of a forefront idea. So before I take on a client, it's really crucial that we align with purpose. What is our purpose in life and what we want to do with this business? And sometimes it aligns and sometimes it doesn't. When it aligns, it's a wonderful relationship, as you can imagine, and then the great work can be done. And I think, because as a brand strategist and someone who helps people guide their companies, it is really important because you become very intimate with them, and in a way becomes almost like brand psychology, where you learn everything about them, from their personal life through their professional life, their ups and downs and that. And if you can't align with that, certainly from an empathetic point of view, then it's very hard to have a vested interest in their success, because all you're doing is just generating transactions at that point,
right,
versus being able to truly help somebody with their business and how they present themselves to the world.
Right. And I think that is so important for, people to hear, because when people start a business, they think, okay, I'm going to do everything for everybody because I just need to make money. I'm starving. I took a loan, whatever it was. And you can trap yourself into, because once customers get used to a certain level of service and you expand to a certain point where you can maybe no longer provide what you provided at one time, customers can kind of start to hold that against you. And I think it's very important
Absolutely.
for where you said they need to align, and you can't be afraid to say no. You don't need to take every client. You need to take the one, like you said, that align with you, that at the end of the day you feel like, yeah, we've come together to have a common goal or help each other or whatever it was. It wasn't just transactional. And I think that gets lost a lot in business today, where it's about the dollars and cents, and it should be about a little bit more. So I'm definitely glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we still have to pay bills, and we still have to create
Absolutely.
a profitable business. But I think as business owners, one of the things we want to always look at is, what's driving us. There's a reason we're doing this, and it ultimately is some form of happiness, whether it's through running the enterprise as it is, or being able to do what you want, or create what you want, or work with the people you want. If that's what drives the happiness, I think that's crucial to keep an eye on that, because it's so easy to be swayed away from it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I quite like what you said about, standing for what you certainly believe in, because from a branding point of view, if you're looking to position yourself in the market to be distinct from other products or other companies, that really means that you have to find that space that truly is different from everybody else. Because if you're the same as everybody else, then you're constantly in this price competitive sort of business.
Right.
If you're in an opportunity where you can form something that is truly unique or positioned unique enough, then you have something to offer people. And that's really part of the work that, as you had touched on before, that you can find just by digging a little bit deeper into yourself.
Right. And so let's go a little bit into what you do with the personal branding, and that. Why is it you feel that having a personal brand, because a lot of people, they either don't want to be the face of the business, or like you say, they don't feel, I don't have an interesting story. And you know what? Look, my hair is not sitting right today. I don't want to have to be the face of the company. Do you believe it's important for the founder to kind of step up and take those reins and share that story and build that personal brand to help the business along?
Yeah, I've seen time and time again with many business owners that it often comes back to them. When you ask their level of success, they may talk about their systems or the product that they've created. But as things become more and more competitive, they realize that the main different ingredient is themselves, and by injecting a level of themselves into the brand, it suddenly becomes the brand itself. And I think for a lot of people, that is quite an aha moment, that the thing that often distinguishes them from someone else is what they bring to the table.
Right.
It could be a level of customer service. It could be their passion. It could be their fastidiousness when it comes to exacting a process. Perhaps it's in the inventive way that they've created the product. Perhaps it's simply the car they drive that reflects their personality. There's something that can often connect with the customer base that they quite like. Now, the challenge, of course, is that as the business owner, you're one individual. And as you grow and expand, how do you replicate that? How do you get people to buy into it? Well, in many ways, you become the model for that success, or the model personality. And I think that's often lost on particularly business owners who will hire just simply to fulfill a position without maybe perhaps understanding how a person may help them fulfill their mission or their purpose, or even live within the culture they're hoping to create.
Right.
We tend to hire based on skills, as you know,
Yeah.
but a lot of people don't focus on, how does this person align philosophically with me? Because
Right.
a lot of times you can teach and train people with the hard skills, but you can't really teach them let's say, the ethics or the personality per se, or the understanding of what you're doing with the company itself.
Right. No, and that's very important. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs, especially when they're starting out, they don't even think about hiring people. It's just like, okay, you know what? I've got to do it all myself because I'm bootstrapping this baby and I can't afford to hire
Yeah,
anybody.
yeah.
But when you get to that point and it comes to hiring somebody, yeah, you're thinking, okay, I got to hire somebody with that skill level. And like you said, there's not a lot of thought that goes into how do they align with what I'm actually trying to do, because, I think we've
Mm-hmm.
seen it, time and time again, where it only takes one bad apple to, ruin the pie, so to speak. And if you're not paying close enough attention to who you're bringing in to your business, there could be, a company can turn toxic very quickly, or a brand name can get a bad reputation very quickly, and
Mm-hmm.
it's very hard
Yeah.
to turn around bad news than it is to get good news out there.
What you're describing is the friction that often happens when cultures aren't aligned. And I'm not talking about background or where you
Right.
necessarily come from, but it's your belief system. And I think so much of that is ignored, particularly as you are looking to expand the company. There's a level of success you've attained by the way you've done things. And sometimes it's the right way. And entrepreneurs, as we know, are constantly learning to adjust. But at the same time, their heart and soul is into it. And there's a certain drive that they have and a certain purpose. And again, that's bringing those people in line with it. So that's why the personal brand, to get back to your original question, is so important, because if you can understand what your brand is about, it reflects into the brand that you have as a company, and people will understand what you're trying to do and either buy into it, which they, wonderful if they do, because then they will come along for the journey, whether it's an employee or whether it's customers. They believe in what you believe in, and it aligns with their own beliefs. And with that, there's so much power, as opposed to constantly trying to educate people to what you're all about.
Right. And let's face it, at the end of the day, especially in the service industry, whether you're doing coaching or whatever, people like to work with people they like. Regardless, I may come to your company and you may cost me $1,000 more than the next company, but I like Henry. I know I get a feel for Henry. I think I can trust him. I relate to his story, whatever the case is. I want to work with Henry, because there's that feeling, and you have to build that, and too often I think we look past that as entrepreneurs. So let's talk about building
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah.
yeah, let's talk about
Oh,
building
sorry.
our no, that's okay. Let's talk about building our personal brand. How do we go about it? How do we start that? How do I look at, okay, I need to get myself out there. I need to get people to like me. How do I go about preparing that story and getting it out there?
The first thing is, and it's really not a complicated step-by-step approach, but the most important part of it is at the beginning is to try to gain insight to who you are. And many of us are perhaps a little bit blind to our own personality traits, whether it's positives or negatives. Sometimes we're so humble, or we're so perhaps underconfident, that we don't often see the best of us.
Right.
So part of the process that I advocate is getting a full picture of who you are. Whether you take a personality test, and that's part one. Whether you get someone to give you some feedback. I run interview processes that get to the heart of what people are often about. You look at perhaps feedback mechanisms, whether it's online or about your company, about from feedback from the people close to you. But all of this is meant to create a composite picture, because there's no real one view that you can have. If I simply look at myself through my own eyes, it's going to be very slanted to perhaps my own delusion that I'm great, or my underconfidence that I'm not so great. But creating that composite picture is the first step. So looking at that in that way, you begin to formulate who you are as an individual. So from that, what you were trying to pull out is what really resonates well with your customer base in terms of the success that you've gained along the way. So one of the exercises I do is really creating a hierarchical chart that puts all these personality points up on the board, and you begin to formulate what you're all about, and you can involve other people if you want, and you begin circling what you stand for. And the idea behind it is to begin to express who you are by these elements itself. Then the next step is trying to, again, thinking of yourself as a bit of a product. How do you go to market? So if you were to create a billboard of what you are as a product, what might those words be? And it's a super interesting exercise. And it's simply, in a billboard, you have maybe 7-8 words in which you can express yourself.
Right.
And you have that time that it takes for the car to drive by the billboard to pick it up. Are you able to write out or suggest a picture or have some way of capturing what you're all about in those few words? From that, you really have the basis for what you truly stand for in that, hopefully that type of position. So this is really the shortcut version of everything I go through.
Right.
Once you formulate that, that becomes your key message. So now, from that key message, what you stand for, how did I get here? That's where the origin story begins. In order to express what you've done in that succinct form, what were the story points that got you there that you can now begin to share? Because ultimately, you want people to walk away with that as a conclusion or that as the end of the story, whatever that line is. Reggie has this wonderful manner about him that makes everybody feel comfortable. If I were to, that's maybe in my quick few minutes of meeting you,
Right.
I think that in my mind kind of sums you up. So now how did you get there in order to be able to have that position in the market? Well, it may be the certain training, maybe it was certain struggles that you went through or understanding, having that empathy, having that certain training. All of that now begins to connect to what that conclusion is, and that forms the story. And once you have that basis, the story structure, then you begin writing it in such a way that, or telling it in such a way that people can understand it and feel really good about hearing it and feel good about, going along with you for that ride itself.
Right.
But it's starting at the end of the book and then working backwards, in other words.
Yeah. Okay. That's very interesting. So it's got to be hard though for people to sit down and either ask somebody, hey, tell me about me, because you got to be thick-skinned, I guess, sometimes to sometimes hear the truth, because like you said, you've got this maybe slanted version of yourself that you think, you know what, I'm pretty good at what I do, or you got imposter syndrome and it's like, I don't really know what the hell I'm doing, but I'm going to do it anyway. And other people don't see you that way, and they come to you and tell you, the wife tells me things about myself all the time that's like, no, that's not me.
Yeah, whether you want to or not.
That's
whether you
right.
Want to hear it or not.
Yeah, whether I ask for her opinion or not, I still get it. But it's like, so how do you I guess humble yourself enough to be willing to listen to that and then take it and put it out there to the world?
I think a lot of it comes back to freeing yourself from the ego element of your personality, to be able to listen to everything with a grain of salt. And you do have to keep in mind, this is just one perspective. It doesn't necessarily represent
Right.
Who you are. But
Right.
what you're trying to do is obviously get enough understanding of how perhaps people perceive you. Anybody who's been in sales, for example, know that there's always a method to gaining sales success, and part of it is the failure in the beginning is really the next step to success. So I know that if I make 10 phone calls, one of those will respond well. But in order to get to that one success, I'm going to have to go through this, and it's painful,
Right.
and it's a lot of work, and I don't want to be rejected.
Absolutely.
And if you apply that same sort of objectivity to yourself, you may not like what you want to hear, but at the same time, maybe it's a deficiency that you're looking to correct. And those people who are open enough to continually course correct and improve upon themselves just become better. And we hear this a lot. I've done a lot of work on myself. And what that often means is that I've gone deep and I've heard the worst stuff and I've work through all the crap that I stand for, and now I'm in a better place. And that's all really part of it as the business personality to be able to hear a little bit of that. That's why some people bring in consultants to maybe get an assessment, because it's often presented and couched in a little bit more palatable way.
Right.
Or they do personality tests in which there's a report and they can get a sense of it, or they run quizzes and get a sense of themselves. Not any one will give you the true answer, but if you do a combination of it, suddenly those elements begin to form, and those that profile of who you are begins to reflect hopefully a little bit of reality. And at that point, you either have to decide, well, I don't really care that I'm this way, or oh, I'm going to work on this aspect so I get better. Because we know that there is a lot of maybe not great individuals who lead companies, but they've led it to success and they're happy with it. In the end, you just really have to be happy with it yourself, because and it may or may not be who you are as a brand or a personality, but if it's what makes you tick and drives you, then understanding that sometimes can give you a lot of comfort at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that hits the nail right on the head. There is if you get to know who you are and you're okay with that, then run with it. You shouldn't have to, because if you're going to try and spend time to change yourself into what you think the customer wants, right? You're just fooling yourself. You're not going to be happy. It's just living a persona. It's basically, telling a lie, I guess. If there's weaknesses I see I need to work on, that's one thing. But if I'm going to try and become somebody I'm not, maybe that's not the right thing. Maybe I need to look at doing something different because I can't align with that. And I shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
Right?
I think you could be quite right with that, isn't it? That sometimes that sort of disconnect can often happen. At the same time, maybe it's also an analysis. Are you in the right business? If it's if you're acting a certain way and it's not making you happy, and customers aren't happy with the way you are, then it's a good perhaps juncture where you may look at something has to change, and maybe I need to put somebody else at the front of the business.
Absolutely.
Instead, and I'm a better person in the back as well, because that's really what my brand is. I'd rather toil away in the background than to have to face another phone call or another sales call. And again, that's perfectly fine. Right? And that's manifesting or developing your brand is really coming to understand yourself, because there's too many manufactured brands out there. I tend to go more in the category of simply being authentic to yourself,
right?
And by understanding that you can find your place in the universe or within business life.
Right. Yeah, and we've seen it lots of times. I mean, and I've heard people say, you know what, I am very good at what I do, but don't put me in front of people. I can start a company, I can make millions of dollars, but don't put me in to talk to people, or I'll sink this ship faster than the Titanic, sort of thing. So sometimes knowing who you are is that's right. Yeah. Okay, listen.
I think too many people make the mistake. Oh, I just wanted to add.
Go ahead.
People make the mistake in thinking that in order to create a brand for myself, that it means I have to put myself out there. When in reality, what a brand is truly understanding what you're all about, so that you can put that best foot forward, whatever that might be. And sometimes it needs to be in the back, and other times you realize, oh, I just need this element, or I need to maybe do a few speech courses in order to stand in front of people, so I can pitch this.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all it takes, but again, it's coming to understand yourself is the first and foremost thing to get going.
Right. Yeah. First and foremost, and I think one of the most important too. Tell me, I seen you said there's a difference between a purpose statement and a mission statement. Now, I know all kinds of companies, especially the larger you get, they have a mission statement. And to me, you know what, sometimes I think it's just words on a piece of paper, just because corporations think that's something we need to do, whether we live by it or not. But can you explain to me the difference between a purpose statement and a mission statement?
Yeah, I've seen this so many times, and many of us who have been in organizations like this, there's often a group think, and everybody is asked to contribute. So there may be a facilitator, and they try to capture words of what you're all about,
Right.
and you create this composite of it. The problem with a mission statement like that is created by consensus is that it may satisfy most of the people, but not everyone. And what I mean by that is that it is almost a compromise itself. I take a word from David. I take a word from Susan. I like what you said over here, and we're going to try to word jumble it, and then suddenly everybody has a little bit of stake in it. Go, okay, yeah, I think that is bland enough that we all accept it.
Right.
What it doesn't do is give a reason for why the company exists, and this is where often the difference is. Every company has always been started typically by one or two entrepreneurs, who have a purpose for why they're doing it, and I think it's super important that they hang on to it. Why do they exist? If you go to many of the famous sort of taglines, before Google became so large, they had this belief of do no evil. That's a purpose statement, and it can be all encompassing, and you can interpret it in so many different ways. And I think for many companies, the idea of a mission isn't necessarily to string a bunch of words together that may satisfy a lot of people, but the idea is that, why are you doing this? And I think that's key, answering the why, and that's the purpose. And so if you can get to that, and you can get other people understanding that, then they're coming along for the ride. They're coming along for this mission. The mission is a result of getting everybody together, and
Right.
it begins with a purpose.
Yeah, and I think I would rather see a company's purpose statement than their mission statement, because to me a mission statement is it's got to be politically correct because it's going out to the world, and now we got to make sure it satisfies everybody, and we know in business that you're not going to satisfy everybody, so you're a fool to try. But I always find these mission statements are a lot of words on a piece of paper that maybe, like you say, it sounds good when we put it all together, but individually none of it really made sense. So I like the purpose statement though. Why did you start this in the beginning? And that's probably what you need to every now and again look back on and say, oh, we're getting a little off track here. We're kind of straying away from why we even started this. I like that. I like a purpose statement. What is a cult brand? I've seen you mention about a cult brand. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, there's a level of fear that happens with certain brands, and we see this in the beginning. The term is often used when you have a certain customer base where the brand no longer belongs to the company, but belongs to them. You try to change it, and they get very upset.
Okay, right.
Where the cult brand comes. And we see this time again in the early days of Tesla and Apple, for example. There was a lot of detractors, but there was a core group of people who really kept it alive because they had a cult-like following. It just aligned so much with their own belief system that they helped carry it. So
right.
in the sort of first rung of people that you're bringing on side, if you're looking to potentially create a cult brand, it's again getting back to what the purpose is, because if you can get people aligned with that purpose, and the product is a manifestation of it, and you begin to associate your belief with that product itself. But it has to come from a place of passion, of true belief. And when people are aligned to that, then you have the beginnings of what can be a cult brand, that no matter what happens, that there's a loyalty that's simply attached to it. And that can only come from an emotional connection that you create with the product, with your customers at the same time.
Right. And do you think that can be a dangerous thing, like you say? And I think we have a very, recent example of that when we look at, the recent downfall, or whatever you want to call it, of Budweiser with the whole Bud Light thing, and where they're trying to kind of change, their advertising in that, and they faced a bit of a wrath with even stock prices. And is that what we're looking at, sort of a cult brand where, wait a minute, I grew up on this, I identified with this, and now you're trying to take it away from me, you're trying to change it? How dare you?
Yeah, and I think that does go to the heart of it, Bud Light may not have been a cult brand for the masses, but certainly it was the brand for a certain group of people
Right.
itself. And at the same time, I think while they were trying to grow, and there are many Monday morning quarterbacks who have talked
Absolutely.
about it the
Absolutely.
day after. So we could certainly analyze it and find our own sort of theory. But I think one of the things that often happens is that unless a brand is near death, where it really doesn't matter where it goes, then it's very difficult to change the entire timbre and personality of it. So there were a lot of people who were still buying Bud Light. It may not have been to the level of success that the company wanted,
Right.
but at the same time, there are ardent fans of it who you wouldn't want to, necessarily piss off or
Right.
get on the wrong side, because this is exactly what began to happen. Sometimes if you swing too far for what it stands for, then, and again, it goes back to what is the purpose of what Bud Light is about. And if it moves away too far, this is not against any of the ambassadors that were used or the personalities.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Didn't necessarily align with, the core belief of what people had. You take another brand years ago, Old Spice. It became such a
Right.
low-selling product. It was our grandfather's aftershave, and nobody really cared. So there's an opportunity there to reinvent it or
Right.
take it into a different area altogether, because there was
Right.
a little bit left to lose. Bud Light, there was a lot to lose.
Right.
And when you get to that level, your core belief system, your mission, all of that purpose, all of that personality is intertwined with it. And it may, and if it doesn't have to literally manifest in that way, but if it somehow doesn't align with some of those core beliefs, it becomes very difficult for people to obviously reconcile it with their own personality.
Right, because at the end of the day, people don't like change. Like you say, when something's not in the forefront, like you say, Old Spice kind of died off. Nobody even really thinking about it as, oh shit, look, they got different advertising, whatever it is. Okay, doesn't really, whatever. Yeah, maybe I'll look at it. But when something is kind of in the forefront or whatever, and then you try to change it, yeah, people don't like change, regardless of what it is, and that can spark some hard feelings. But absolutely, no, that question wasn't about anybody or anything. It just, is that kind of the cult brand sort of thing. So
I mean, to finish off on that thought, if we go back to, in a more nefarious way, cults have often, seen as, a very charismatic leader who often brainwashes, followers to doing what they want.
Right.
But if you begin to analyze it, part of that is true, particularly, if you look at the evil side of it. But from a cult experience, it really comes from a certain passion. If you really believe in something and you share it so fervently that everybody gets behind it, or enough people buy into what you're saying, and that really is the beginning of a cult in a way. If you look at the likes of the horrible person Charles Manson, he really only had maybe a dozen followers. That isn't a large movement, but he was able to express himself in such a way that he got people behind him to be able to do what he wanted to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh yes, it doesn't take much to get that following and get them to the point where they'll buy into whatever you're selling, so to speak. And
and by no means is Christianity a cult, but if you think of the early disciples who had 12 disciples who had their own version of Christianity and the word of Jesus Christ, and they went forward and look at what we have today.
Right.
Maybe a little bit of a dissidence amongst slightly different belief systems, but at the same time, from that sort of early passion and early belief in something, it can grow exponentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be a good thing or a bad thing, I guess, depending on which way it goes. And I think it all comes back to remembering your purpose statement. And I'm gonna harp on that one from here on in, because I really like that. So tell me, once I've developed my personal brand, How does social media help me with that? What should I be doing? Am I going out now and I'm coming on podcasts? I'm saying, hey, let me tell your story, or I go on TikTok and I do a little dance and tell my story. How does social media help with getting my personal brand story out there?
I think the thing to keep in mind with social media, it is a medium, meaning it's a platform which you can express your story. So within the world of advertising, the right way to create a media plan or in terms of how you go to market through the different avenues is determine where your customers are. So what do they consume? So many of us think that, oh, everybody's on TikTok, so we should be on TikTok.
Right.
Well, if your audience is on TikTok, so look at a way of creating content that reflects your story, that talks to that audience, but perhaps they're not. Perhaps they're maybe stay-at-home moms who drive their kids to school, and maybe a radio broadcast would be more interesting, or a podcast, because that's what they're listening to. So social media is just really one venue by which you can get the word out there. We may determine that it's LinkedIn because it's a little bit more focused on business to business, so it's
right.
a different form of social media. And a lot of people look at these tools because they're easily accessible and I can create it. But the problem often is creating the content or creating the post and putting it out there is one thing, but getting people to watch it or to get one of the platform's algorithms to pick it up
Right.
is certainly another. So it really, you have to look a little bit deeper as to where your audience is and how you might connect with them. And many people don't necessarily do that. They may say, I have to grow my customer base, so what can I do? Often the analysis simply involves do a stock of where your success is, what type of customer, what sort of profile they have, what sort of personality are buying into the service or company that you're offering them. That forms the composite of who they might be. And with that, you begin to perhaps see the type of social media that certainly works. And we hear this a lot from business owners of,
Right.
well, I tried this, it didn't work, and I tried this, it seemed to work, So again, it's taking a little bit of that objective viewpoint. And social media may be the answer, but it may be something else. So that's my only caution, is that don't get pulled into social media just because everybody else is.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up about, kind of profiling your customers, because we always hear people, who work in advertising that and say, well, go where your customers are. And I've had people ask me, well, how the hell do I figure out where my customers are? I mean, I'm going to assume that they're, scrolling this or that, but I don't really know. So is there, and I'm not going to say an easy way, because obviously none of it's easy, but if you were just starting again and you're looking at, well, who your customers are, how are you trying to define where they're spending their free time?
Yeah, I mean, that's the power sometimes of Google as well. It's not difficult to be able to get a sense of who your customers is once you have an idea of them. What are middle-aged men buying these days?
Okay.
So there's all sorts of information that's out there that can be easily assessed online.
Right.
At the same time, I mean, it behooves you to, if you're running an existing business, to get a customer feedback loop. You could. The Google reviews exist out there. You
Right.
can send out surveys. You can talk to people to get a sense of who they are. It's not that difficult if you spend the time. If you feel that's important to help drive, a repeatable type of business. Because quite often, from an advertising point of view, when agencies such as mine begin to do work for a company, one of the first things you do is, let's do some customer analysis and see what they're all about.
Right.
And it's much more than you'll find a mindset. And what I mean by that, what I mean by this is that it's much more than just simply a demographic. It's a mindset that often occurs.
Right.
So I see this a lot these days. I don't know if you listen to classic rock at all. But, it's something I had grown up with, and
Right.
it's,
Yeah.
being of a certain age, that's what I listen to. But at the same time, there's also a whole level of younger people who didn't even grow up with this music listening to it at the same time. And you realize that it's much more than just a demographic. It becomes a certain mindset. There's a certain style that's exhibited, a certain type of personality that music has that connects with people. And it's the same with the products and service you have. You may
Right.
think that it's in certain one age group, but
Yeah.
really go beyond that. Begin to think of the person and what changes their life or makes better their life. And you'll find that it may cover a lot of different age groups at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice because, like you say, everybody talks about a demographic. Look for the 35 to 50-year-old man who's, doing this or doing that, or, the stay-at-home mom or something like that. But you just nailed it there where you said, yeah, but that's not the only person who's doing this. And dig a little deeper. And I don't think enough people put enough weight on the mindset that is buying a product or something. So that there is great advice. Yeah, don't just look at the demographic. That's awesome. I'm going to get close to wrapping things up here, but I want to ask you. Okay, so now I've built my personal brand, and do I ever need to revisit it? Do I ever need to look at it again, or am I just no? That's it. Off we go, and I'm riding it into the sunset. Or is there a time when
Yeah.
I need to step back and say, okay, have I changed? Which we do, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah.
So do I need to revisit my story?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. And that is, we are evolutionary beings, so we may change over time, and that might be a good opportunity. There may be a business change, and there may be a life change of some sort, and that can often alter the way we perceive life. And that's a good opportunity to certainly re-examine it. When you feel a little bit disconnected from what you're exhibiting, or this doesn't really reflect who I am today, that's a good chance to take a look at it again and do a little bit of a reset. And it's not so much a revolutionary change in the way we've talked about, but sometimes it can be just a evolution, a tweak to it. And we see this even in product brands.
Yeah.
The logos can change over the years
Right.
because it reflects the times and reflects the personalities. The heart of it doesn't change. If you look at the history of, let's say, Shell, for example, and you look at the early logos versus what is today, it still a Shell, still interpretation of it. It's just modernizing, and that may be part of the personal brand. You may have evolved somewhat, and you may want to tweak aspects of who you are and how you present yourself, but ultimately you're still true to who you are as an individual and your ultimate purpose in life.
Right. And I think that, I've always mentioned to people too, excuse me, that your why for the business needs to be strong, but every now and again you need to have a look at your why. Because as you spend more time in a company, as you age, that why may change, and it's no different than your personal brand may change, and you need to step back and have a look at them, and maybe make some adjustments if needed, but don't stray too far from the path, I guess, of that purpose statement. And I'm writing up my purpose statement when we're done. But yeah, I think absolutely always got to step back and have a look at where you were, where you're going, and where you want, or where you were, where you are, and where you're going. And don't be
Yeah, I think
surprised if
where
it
you're going
changes.
is particularly, yeah, where you're going may be particularly important because certainly as people mature and are perhaps at the tail end of their business career, the one thing that we often take a look at is how do I want to write my end story?
Right.
What sort of legacy do I want to leave? And that may be part of that rewiring at that time, or re-examining your brand and how you want to be thought of, because it's a different sort of environment at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we wrap things up here, I want to ask you, Henry, what words of advice would you give to, my listeners, anybody listening who is thinking about getting into entrepreneurialism? What words of advice would you give?
I think you touched on that magic word. What's the purpose for why you're doing it? And take a hard look at that because it's a great self-examination, and understanding that will help to spur you on time and time again, whether you're driven by profits, or whether you're driven by maybe serving humankind in some way. I think get to the purpose of why you're doing it, and make sure it aligns with your your own belief systems. And I think in the end, what I'm perhaps pushing for is that reconciliation of that to ensure a level of happiness in life.
Right. And we definitely could all use a little bit more of that some days is, you know
Yeah.
what, when you
Yeah.
can spend, 10, 15, 20 hours a day. And I've, spoke to somebody who last night when he started his business would be up at 4 a.m. and work till midnight. And that was just what you did. But when you can do that every day and be happy at the end of the day because you're striving for a purpose or your why, it makes it all worth it at the end of the day. It's you didn't just, waste your life away, and you did it with purpose. And whether it solved anybody else's purpose, as long as you were happy at the end of the day, that's hopefully why you started the business.
I think so. I think so. Too many people get into this gerbil wheel of just running the business without realizing that it's affecting their health, their happiness, and that get back to why you're doing it. And, sometimes it takes a step back to realign everything again.
That's great. Well, Henry, listen, I want to thank you for joining us today. If people want to know more, if people are interested in possibly, learning more about Vyoo and how you can help them, where can they find out more?
So for the business, I have vyoobrand.com, VYOO brand.com. If you're looking to hear a little bit more about the book and what maybe it can help you in any way, go to henrywong.co. You'll find the book and where you could purchase it through Amazon or Chapters here in Canada, Barnes and Noble in the U.S. So
yeah, and I'm sorry,
hopefully that can help.
Yeah, and I totally skipped by the book. Let's take a couple of minutes here, and I apologize for that before we wrap up because you are an author. Yeah. No, but I meant to bring it up, and we got on other topics. So tell us a little bit about the book, telling your story, and why you wrote it, and who it's designed to help out.
Well, in a manner of speaking, we've talked in around all the subjects that you would find in the book. So all the methods that we've touched on and I've shared are really in the book. But funny enough, when we were talking before the show during COVID, it really became the project when we had a lot of time and a lot of us were locked down. It became my Saturday morning project where I began writing chapters, and before you knew it, I had a publisher who was interested in running it, so that became the basis of it. But the whole idea or the purpose behind the book is to help people tell their story, because I think everybody has that built into them in some way, and that's really that connection you're looking to make. And hopefully it can help a few other people try to manifest their brand and reconcile it with their company brand at the same time.
Right. And that's great. And yes, like Henry said, excuse me, a lot of the questions that I asked Henry, I know revolve around the book. And I think, it'd be great on anybody's bookshelf to use to help you, learn to tell your story and help build your personal brand. So I'll definitely be putting those links in the show notes, Henry. So, people can get a hold of you or get a copy of the book. And I'm definitely getting myself one because that's why I wrote those show notes, because I thought, oh, hey, these are great questions, so the book's got to be awesome. So I appreciate it. So listen, you know what, Entrepreneur Nation, on behalf of Henry, on behalf of me, I want to thank you for allowing us into your life. We've been about an hour here now, and I hope you got some inspiration from it. I hope you got some education. Henry, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to speak to the listeners, and I hope you've enjoyed yourself.
Very much. Thank you so much, Reggie.
Oh, absolutely, and we'll definitely be doing it again. But listen, before we wrap up, Entrepreneur Nation, you know what? I always leave you with a golden nugget, and I'm going to leave you with this one. It's short and sweet. That's where I kind of try to leave things. But you've often heard the statement, dream big and start small. And the most important word in that statement is start. Making the decision to go for it is a step that many people never get to. It's probably the most overwhelming part to just jump in with both feet. But once you decide to move on to the next steps, everything will start flowing. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it. Sometimes it seems like you're banging your head against a wall. You're 2 steps forward, 1 step back sort of thing. But you're going to face new challenges at every turn. But if you stick with it, I'm sure you'll find that the decision to start was one of the best decisions you've ever made. Don't be afraid to start turning those dreams of business ownership into reality. You'll be glad you did. With that being said, Entrepreneur Nation, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I want to take this trip with you, regardless of where you are. If you've got any questions you want to ask, shoot me a line. If I can't help you, I'll pass you on to Henry or somebody, that can. We've had lots of great guests on here, and Henry is just, one of many who've got knowledge that, I know he'd be more than willing to help out with. So thank you once again. I appreciate you all. And until next time, stay safe. Keep pushing forward to turning those dreams of business ownership into reality.